Hello, my name is Jennifer Engel, and I'm going to be reading Chapter 5 of Linea. Again, hablo un poquito español, so I am not actually going to be reading the Spanish parts. I have this general template for my students to look at, and I've kind of covered how it works in Chapter 4 if you want to see that. I'm not actually going to be typing the answers in Chapter 5 because now at this point, if my students are listening to me read, I want them to be able to do it themselves. But just so that you know, this is the response. This chapter contributes to the plot of the story because who did what, why, and so. This shows, this proves, or this reveals, which is important because. Now I am giving them a little bit of a focus. So here, Miguel's going to meet Don Clemente. And so we want to, whenever you are thinking about this though, it's always going to be Miguel and what Miguel did and how that contributes to him going north. Okay? So keep that in mind as you're getting ready to listen and read the story. All right. Oops, I was reading ahead here just a little bit while I was waiting for my other video to process. There we go. Chapter 5. By Sunday noon, everyone knew Don Clemente had returned from La Capital. You couldn't miss his new black Mercedes among the 30-year-old beat-up, patched together VW Beetles and Chevy Novas. Most of us didn't have cars at all. I walked to Don Clemente's compound. It was no longer a house. He added 2 stories, a fancy tiled courtyard, a 3-car garage, gates all around, a security system. They said there was even a swimming pool inside. Don Clemente made his money off of people like us who needed him. Juanito stood at Don Clemente's front gate. He slouched against the wrought iron, his hands stuck in his pockets. Juanito was Don Clemente's nephew, spoiled by money and too much time on his hands. He screened his uncle's visitors. I hated him. Ever since we both tried out for goalie on the best regional soccer team, it had been my last shot to make it, and Juanito had beat me out. Everyone believed Don Clemente had bribed the coach. Then Juanito had squandered his chance by drinking and partying and missing practice. Within 2 months, he'd been kicked off the team. Juanito was a jerk, yet I envied him more than I hated him. Sometimes they felt like the same things, hate and envy. I was jealous of Juanito's easy money. I hated him for his freedom to do what he wanted. The worst thing was that Juanito knew how I felt. I couldn't hide it. He'd take advantage of me if he could. Hey, Juanito, I said. I have to see him. I moved closer. His eyes were red. He covered them quickly with his sunglasses. I smiled to let him know what a loser he was. He's busy. You better come back another day, Juanito answered. I was sure this was a lie. It was just Juanito's way of annoying me. I didn't back down. Check for me, I replied. He's expecting me. I sat down on a carved bench flanked by planters overflowing with bright pink, I don't know how to say that word. And then I pulled out a newspaper and read the soccer scores. I wasn't going anywhere until I saw Don Clemente. Juanito sighed, punched a code into the gate, and retreated into the house. I waited an hour. When Juanito finally returned, he led me wordlessly through the cool courtyard and around the side of the house to the back. Don Clemente sat on a vine-covered patio, his back to me, sipping black coffee. He didn't turn to greet me. He just motioned with his good right hand to come and sit across from him. With the bad left hand, he dismissed Juanito. Don Clemente turned his one good eye toward me. He didn't try to hide the dark red burn scars that covered his whole left side of his face. He didn't cover up the empty eye socket. He dared me to stare, to be embarrassed for him. I didn't look away. Don Clemente respected those who weren't afraid to see his ugliness. He leaned down and pulled a packet of papers out of the briefcase at his feet. I've heard from Domingo, he announced. Tu padre, he added, as if I might have forgotten Papa's name. He sent money, and he asked to make arrangements for you to go. Don Clemente pushed the papers across the table to me. Everything you need is in there. It's becoming more complicated to take the journey. You must follow the instructions I provided. Unfortunately, I can no longer vouch for everyone who assists in my operation, he explained. I've had to rely on those whose reputations you should fear. He stopped and let it sink in. I waited for him to finish. But your coyote, he continued, pointing to the papers, the one I've arranged for, he's the best. I paid him half the fee already. The rest you'll take with you and pay him when his job is done. He's trustworthy, unlike most. Papa trusts you. I'm ready to go. I said it with confidence, but I felt scared. Don Clemente was not making too much of the risks. Everyone had stories, bad stories, but I couldn't afford to wait. It wasn't getting easier to get across La Linea. It was getting harder every day. Domingo must be desperate to have you with him, Don Clemente continued. This is the first time he asked for my help. I would have helped with your mother. I offered to send you, too, a long time ago, and your sister. But Domingo was too proud to accept. I couldn't believe my ears. What was Don Clemente saying? All Papa had to do was ask, and I could have gone just like that? I waited and waited just because Papa wouldn't ask a rich old man for help? Don Clemente had money coming out of his ears. It especially hurt to know it was Papa's pride that kept us apart, more than the money. Don Clemente handed me an envelope with a stack of bills. You know what I owe, Domingo. This was a small payment on a large debt. It was true. Papa had pulled Don Clemente from a roaring fire that burned down his house and killed his wife and daughter. Papa saved him from the flames, but he couldn't save him from becoming bitter. Money took the place of Don Clemente's family. They had said that he trafficked in everything. He could get anybody anything he wanted or needed, anything at all. But Don Clemente's specialty was why most people ended up knocking on his gate, hat in hand. Everybody in the state knew him as the person who arranged the safest passage north for the biggest price. If you could scrape together his fees, you went with Don Clemente. They said he's never lost a single person. We could never afford Don Clemente's price. Whatever money Papa sent, Don Clemente was making up the difference himself. I touched the edge of the bills in the envelope. Some of the money came from Papa's cutting lettuce, from Mama's picking strawberries or weeding and hoeing, the rest of it from Don Clemente. They say you're very quick, he looked at me curiously. Marisol was like you, smart, quicker than all the others. She would have gone far. He paused and rubbed the taut skin around his eye socket. Read the instructions carefully. Follow them exactly. My people will be expecting you. Gracias, Don Clemente, I replied. I'll do as you say. I stood up and stuck out my hand. Don Clemente grasped it firmly in his. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Juanito emerge from the shadows at the edge of the patio. Don Clemente looked at his nephew, then he pulled me into a hug. He was stronger than he looked. He held me for a second, then he whispered his blessing. All right, so what you should do now, if you're one of my students, is you should go into Chapter 5, meaning Don Clemente. You are going to, if it's easy, copy and paste the template into Chapter 5. Simply type, this chapter contributes to the plot of the story because Miguel, remember that's our who, did what and why did he go do that? Okay, what did he learn here about his dad and why is that important? And then join me for Chapter 6.